My screen, all right?
Yes, sir.
All right. But so thank you so much. Just a little bit background about me. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer for Market Muse. So I manage both the marketing team and the product team, and that includes our data science team as well as our engineering team. And today's discussion really going to be about how to build content plans and really ensure that you're focusing what you build on what's important for your business or your site. So it's establishing yourself as an authority, establishing that you can answer the needs of prospects. You can give people what they want with the content that you build. And I don't want to extend the time too long until without going into this, but I did also want to say that I truly appreciate props to everybody setting this up. The 24 Hours of SEO group. I'm connected with a number of people who have really supported this cause, and it was a no-brainer for me. The charity St. Jude is a real special one. So if you haven't considered a donation, please do it at whatever level you feel is appropriate. They do amazing things, and I know was just described, but it's sometimes it's not easy to see that they innovate in spaces where many large medical organizations won't touch, and for many reasons that I could stand on a very large soundbox and talk about, but they don't. They do things that other people won't touch for many reasons. So I'll get off that soapbox and the topic today, get into it. Again, how to build content plans and improve site authority with user intent profiling specifically. I'm really going to talk about some practical applications of something that in this space is really considered a little bit esoteric and weird, which is thinking about intent, thinking about what a user wants. And because it's very important, you have to be thinking this. You have to be thinking critically to understand how every article that you publish, every item that you update, is contributing to the overall success of your brand or of your site. And so, first thing I'll mention is, unfortunately, sadly, the situation that we're in now is people are still doing this, and the data points that they're using are suspect, right? They're only looking at keyword research solutions. Maybe it's Google AdWords Keyword Planner. Maybe it's something else. They're looking at the keyword that they love and that they care about, and they're looking at, in some cases, just pay-per-click competition, which has been the standard, unfortunately, for years for a great deal of people. And I mention this not because it relates to explicitly building content plans, building authority, and thinking about user intent profiling, but just that the fact that this is still a great percentage of agencies that give solutions for kind of novice customers, and it is a lot of internal content teams practices. It yields a lot of weird situations in the market. It yields a lot of opportunity for you because you're thinking critically enough to join the 24 Hours of SEO YouTube channel, and you're thinking that there must be a better way of building content that's going to service your users more effectively. And so quickly, I'll mention, like, this was the first way of people thinking about, I need to find my keywords. I need to be thinking about those keywords. I need to focus on the ones that have high volume and low competition. Can I find those, those ideal holy grail situations? I've also got ones that have high volume and high competition. To achieve them, I'm going to have to do a lot of work. So I'm going to really need to make sure that it's great if I go for it. Low volume and low competition. That's going to be something where it may be a layup, historically called maybe a long tail, or something that's really specific to my business, and I can build small amounts of content and do well. And then you got the low volume and high competition. That's going to be a special case. And those are situations where you'd only do it if it's high conversion rate value. So when you get a lead through that avenue, it might be, wrongful death attorneys in Poughkeepsie, New York. But when you get a case from that type of lead, it's worth millions of dollars. So in these situations, your really Foursquare process is giving you kind of the first place to go, but it's extremely dated tactic because it's not really thinking about you. It's not thinking about your site. It's not thinking about what content you have today, who the world thinks you are, who the search engines think you are, and how that should relate to your next steps. It's really just focusing on a bunch of words that then you've got to take and do something that isn't going to be disjointed. And again, when you do find those ideal situations, everybody's doing it that way, right? You know, the boulder, they're piling in, you know, lots of garbage content. They're piling in some great content. You may have some more powerful competitors, and they're writing a lot of great stuff. So those are going to go away over time as well. And so you've got these situations where you know, when that happens, you're going to start to see those things fade. And if you're standing still, if you don't have that documented content strategy, these things are going to go away. And then you're not going to really know what to do. Are you going to go out and find more words? Are you going to go out and find things that you should be writing about? There's a better way. And so what I want to talk about is, first of all, some of those data points, why they're not the, you know, gold standard for what you should be thinking about. What third-party competition data is valuable? What things should you be critically thinking about when you're looking at those things? And then, you know, what happens when you realize that maybe your business or your site, you've taken those approaches? How do you get out of your own way in those situations? Can you now take the data that you have, the information about your site, about the places where you are considered a subject matter expert, where you have some authority, and connect the dots? Really build a concerted clustering strategy that takes what you've built, bridges those things together, and it will yield a situation where all boats are rising for your site. So to do that, the first stage, of course, is to look into the mirror, right? To look in the mirror and hold up your site analytics and say, you know, okay, I'm going to be realistic. This isn't an internal report that I'm trying to make myself look good or my client look good or validate their ideas. It's really about what's really driving traffic for my site. Okay, what's really building the traffic? Where do I have efficiencies? And efficiency meaning when I write content on these topics, it does well. It achieves my business goals. It achieves whatever it is my core KPIs are. Is it improving revenue per 1,000 page views on a publishing site? Is it getting more leads? Is it getting more sales? Is it improving average order size in an e-commerce situation? So what pages are actually driving that traffic? Am I proud of them? Are they representing my business well? Or was it, you know, the top 10 ways that, you know, I did something and I happen to get a lot of traffic because of some way? Or is it, you know, which pages are getting those conversions? Am I driving those visitors to places where they can convert and they can influence my overall key performance indicators? Or is it that I'm just trying to hit my traffic number and I know that I'm going to get my conversion number from somewhere else? And are all of those things truly connected to your business vision? Are they on the topics that you wish to own? And you wish for your business to be considered an authority? What we'll often find is that teams have been taking various keyword research process steps, and maybe they've got editorial teams writing on their own in silos, and they're not connecting to one another. They're not connecting the content items. And what you end up having is the ones that are performing in organic search don't necessarily meet the business vision of today, or they might meet the business vision of 3 years ago. And those are still generating the traffic. And we haven't done anything to tweak those situations. So the first step really is to see, what have we done, and did I just get lucky, or did my strategy actually execute and yield content that's producing visitors that tell the story, and they are the ones we want. They are the prospects that we need, and it's because we've established ourselves as an authority. And last, I'll mention, you know, it's also important to have that mirror in front to say, did I get lucky in these situations? Would I be a sitting duck if a competitor were to start profiling me and profiling my content strategy? And they were tactically picking me off and building better content than me, building content that better achieved user intent, better served the readers, and said, okay, well, you know, John Smith's site isn't going to really change all that much because they think they've got this process in line. I'm going to build a better page that answers all the user questions, that allows them to achieve their goals better. And they're not going to stand a chance because they can't move as fast as I can. And that's where I really pivot into, you know, thinking about user intent. This is the sort of yawn definition, the definition of user intent, right? It's like, I don't really understand how to make this applicable to me. It's that there's informational queries. I want to learn something. You know, there's 15 different user intent profile maps. There are people that have mapped it to a buyer journey in their industry, which can be a very valuable technique. There's ones that have added local search and queries that now get answered by Google instantly, instant matches or news matches or things, pardon me, of that nature. But really the biggest things to think about is I'm looking for a particular brand. I'm looking to compare a particular brand. I'm looking for a particular website. I'm seeking out either whether I'm in the consideration phase or the awareness phase or the purchase phase. I'm seeking out something to either purchase or to connect with, or I'm trying to learn something. What's the capital of North Dakota? I've got these different situations that, these are the standard definitions, but this is typically where people stop when they're thinking about user intent. They're like, okay, well, I've got this one. I'm going to map this word to this user intent. It doesn't mean all that much unless you can draw some sort of correlation and use that to define your strategy. So what today we're really going to speak about is a couple innovations in user intent that I've been working on personally with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it gets us closer to the way that the search engines are thinking about intent. And it also will get you critically thinking about the way how hard it is for the search engines to actually give great results that meet some percentage or all of the users' needs, the things that people care about. And thinking critically, becoming the search engine result page detective effectively to assess what is happening behind the scenes and what you need to make as a result of that. And the first thing I always talk about here is thinking about explicit intent. It's difficult to write great content at scale and to, understand that content isn't just about managing keywords. It's not about matching keywords. It's really about thinking, okay, what types of things would people be searching for that would connect to the pages that I intend to write or I need to write? So what explicit intent means, it's really, really important to key in on this. It's that this query only does one thing. There's only one thing that someone really wants when they're typing in this query. That would be an intent, a query that has the intent that's explicit. I mean, it's obvious after I say it, right? I'm looking for the 2018 Dodge Caravan tire size. I love this example. What is it? Is it 16 or is it 35? I don't know. I should probably look at that for this, for the case of this, for this example. But this is where you've got something. There's not a lot of difference in why I would be researching it. Maybe there's a little bit, maybe there's a few nuance, but it's pretty close to explicit intent. What you're going to see in that situation in the Google search results is that all of them are going to provide a mixed bag. You're going to get something that's more general and provides a lot of information, but then you're going to get things that will service explicitly this value. So obviously, if you're a search engine optimization professional and you're thinking critically here, what if none of the results are good? And this is something that matters to your business. And you can truly answer that question. You can answer that explicit intent, and that matters to your business. Are you good enough? Do you already have enough authority on things related to this so that you'll immediately perform? Maybe, maybe not. That's when you're going to have to take and be a little bit more critical about your site. But thinking critically when you're looking at the SERP, when you're looking at the search engine result page and saying, are these great results? Are they providing the value that the user might expect with their explicit intent queries? The next is really thinking about intent fracture. So intent fracture is something that is, I'm passionate about. If you've ever heard anything that I've spoken about, I say intent fracture like 15 times and everything. So what this isn't ambiguous meaning. It's not synonyms. It's that the thing that someone typed in, they might type it in and they have completely different reasons for typing it in. They have different intent. There's fracture within the intent. I may be early stage awareness. I may be middle of the funnel. I may be late stage. I may be just looking for something completely different. There's a lot of spread in what I'm looking to accomplish by typing in this query. Some things that you might have seen, in your everyday world is, the example on this graphic here, you see some suggestions for making your query more refined, some query variants that might lead to a more explicit intent of your query. And what you'll also see is in the search engine results page, the search engines don't have an explicit answer for you. So they might be providing various intents. They might want, if they type in CRM software, they might want to see some examples of vendors. They might want to see someone who's written long form content about comparing vendors. They might want to see a definition about what is CRM software. I'm not sure, Google will say. And they want to provide, because it's fractured intent, they want to provide a cornucopia of options that maybe will allow them to realize who and when are more people looking for these types of results. So when you're looking at, remember slide 2, when you're looking at doing your keyword research, some questions you need to ask yourself are, is this intent fractured or is it explicit? Is that what's driving that search volume? All right. This is where the light bulbs typically go off. I've got to write content that speaks to the entire intent story in order to do well. I've got to really tell the story that I'm an expert across the board for all of those variants, for all the reasons why somebody might be researching this, if I truly want to be an authority on that topic. And here's a cool example here that, there's some vocabulary words in here, which I'll get into, but covering all the intent in one long form guide or a pillar page that tells the story that, hey, I actually know everything about this topic. My site, my business, I know it all. I have a great sense of what this is about. I understand the nuance of the buy cycle here. I understand the types of things people might want. I understand that you might want to know about maybe jobs in this area, as well as a more of a robust definition. So that's starting to get into kind of the first phase 1 of thinking like a content strategist who understands that really establishing yourself as an authority is job 1 for today's search engine optimization professionals with respect to content. And it's not this. This is what commonly I get when I'm talking about this is, okay, well, is this like, the word bat? It's got a lot of different meanings. Nope, it's not that, it's a completely different sentiment. So if your topic has multiple meanings, it's ambiguous meaning. There's some really nerdy phrases for this. You can go look them up in the natural language processing field. There's a lot of work that's being done by a lot of people, like our team at Market Muse, but also, some really amazing researchers in the field, really thinking critically about what does it mean to be about this thing? Well, I've got to get and know what type of this thing I'm actually looking up. So again, this slices a little bit more off of your search volume equation, right? So if something's ambiguous and it has fracture, how much true search volume am I actually fighting for? And I'll add another level of specification about why this is the way to do things. But let's just say I'm looking at bats and I think, oh, wow, I really need to be the #1 performer. Well, it's not just about thinking about what is being serviced by the search engine result page. It's also thinking about, am I truly about the military definition of bat as well as the film? That makes absolutely no sense in most cases. So we have a lot of search engine optimization professionals that are trying to build content packages around all of the ambiguous meanings because they think that that's going to tie them to success. This happens so rarely. It's amazing when I do see it happen. It's an aberration, and it's where a site has massive authority on this topic. And some, search engine optimization professional got in and goes, "Hey, maybe we should write an article about this." I saw this on I won't out them on a client of mine, and someone sometime in the past wrote an article that basically listed a bunch of quotes that were not relevant to their business, and it was ranking and generating a lot of traffic. And so Market Muse was giving them recommendations about that page, and they're like, "Oh, that page isn't important to my business." And I basically say to them, "Why do you have it there? Who gave you that great advice? And do you really feel that that's representing your brand well and growing your authority on the core meaning of that term?" And again, some steps that you can follow. It's to say, don't necessarily use the groups that are off the shelf. Use the ones that you feel are important. I think that people who are looking for early stage awareness are valued at this much for me in these particular topics. Here's how much money I want to apply to my content efforts to support that. Here's some items that are, I need to tell the story that I have the best offering, the best product. So if someone's diving deep about this software package, I need to represent myself as having the best features. So I have to illustrate that I know everything about that feature or that benefit or that risk that someone might have during that purchase process. So building your own groups to classify your topics and classify your keywords in. I think that's a first step, and really thinking about this. You know what else this is going to do internally? It's going to illustrate that you're not like everyone else. You're really considering the editorial team's desires with their writing. You're considering the executive suite's desires and who they care about. You're considering the sales team and who they care about. And you're saying, well, actually, this is the group that we really care about, and here's the content that we need to build to service those people's needs at these stages of the buy cycle. And this works even with e-commerce, with B2C. No matter what, even if you're buying socks, there's still a buy cycle. It may not be one that you can really focus on, but there's always a way to map it to the journey for someone to either become a member of your community, a member of your publication, or to purchase your products or services. What that's going to lead yourself to get into is that the outcome of that mirror test, right? It's where am I not servicing the users? And is that the thing that's leading to me not do well? Do I have situations where I rank really well for a page and someone gave me the advice, well, man, you rank number one for that, don't touch it, right? Terrible advice. If that page actually doesn't service the customer's needs, is that good advice? Is that the situation where I could be using that page for something else? I could be building support structure that does service the customer's needs. These are just some types of intent gaps that you'll see. But as simple as looking at the SERP and seeing maybe there's some stuff in there that isn't good is easy. Where maybe you have a page that isn't very good or isn't servicing the needs of the user. That's when it gets a little bit hard, because you got to be self-aware. And you might have to confront somebody internally that wrote the page and say, hey, we need to adjust this. I had a great call with a client last week, and they were talking about how when they find these, they will add modules to the page that they know may service the user's intent of a particular type. And I'm like, that's beautiful. That's the type of stuff we're talking about. And you can get quick wins. And you can also find situations where you can find a pattern in your historical content process that's always a mistake. So you can take all the topics and apply scalable content solutions. So let's say maybe I always wrote short form 1-paragraph blurbs that defined the term that I was targeting. And I know that I did that 1,000 times. Well, I know I've got to go back and take 1,000 steps. I know that's a large number to improve each one of those pages. Another here would be content gaps. Content auditing is very difficult. It's a red herring as in the world of people think that content inventories need to be done once a year, and they think that they're extraordinarily hard. That's not exactly what I'm speaking about, because I like to make sure that this can be done at a page level or a small subgroup or at the site level to provide opportunities. But really thinking about what is missing from this page. And obviously this is something that my business does, but it is something you need to be thinking about. Does this page actually comprehensive? Is it telling the story that I know what I'm talking about? And by saying that, I mean it includes concepts that a subject matter expert would have included if they covered this. So if you're covering the topic of content marketing strategy and you don't mention buyer personas and you don't mention target audience, well, you're not really an expert. If you don't mention personas and you really knew about content marketing strategy, it's not just about writing the word content marketing strategy. That's not how the search engines work. You've got to be thinking about, does this page represent that I actually am an expert? And that's when I mentioned, areas of consolidation. That's where I'm trying to figure out, where do I have scalable situations where I can improve pages? Where do I have new pages that I know that I need to build out and interconnect in order to weave that collection of content together? And that's the starting point. That's really the getting out of the woods, getting out of the keyword woods, getting out of the spreadsheets, and starting to think like your customers. Starting to think about what they're doing and starting to really, hold up that mirror and say, who am I truly with my content? Am I getting away with bad content just because it ranks? Not cool. It's not going to last. There's far too many people who are getting very good at this very quickly, especially if you're in a reasonably competitive space. You've got to put out those great pieces. You've got to engineer workflows that get users from content items to conversion pages, or having modules on those pages that are going to convert them there and then. Um, pardon me. And so the next thing I really think about is this journey, effectively, from going from keywords to topics, going from topics to thinking about intent, is to say, what can I map my historical strategy to user intent? Can I map my current strategy to that? Am I misguided with what I think works? Or have I gotten advice that somehow might not work? And the most easy example for this is, I go in, I use my audit, I look at all my pages that have traffic. I think that I need to eliminate all the ones that have no traffic. Still a practice people do. It freaks me out. That content could be wonderful. It could be servicing part of the buyer journey. It could be contributing to the story that you are an authority. So thinking critically about what those pages represent. And maybe they were orphaned out in left field on your site and they weren't even linked. Maybe you could have just improved your internal linking structure, and that page would have contributed more to your authority. So it's not just about the content and the results and the rankings. Chasing rankings for specific keywords and not thinking about, does this page rank for hundreds of things? Only we're focusing on that one particular term gets you in so many pieces of trouble. And one of them is, you don't really understand your buyer journey. You don't understand whether you have content that meets those needs. And while I mentioned earlier that becoming a detective with the search engine result page is part of doing this well, it's also not the whole story. You really have to think about what would make sense. Would it make sense that you only had content about pricing because you think that that page, that when someone lands on a pricing page, will convert to the most sales? But think about that. Would a site that sells microphones only have information about microphone pricing? Absolutely not. That makes absolutely no sense. There's a very small niche of sites that would only have that information, and they're not going to rank for other stuff along that buyer journey. So be thinking about, where do you have content across that journey? Are you comprehensive or are you not? The only people that can truly get away with those laser beams are sites that have awesome, massive amounts of authority. Not going to be the typical situation. If you're in that situation, it's awesome, and there's ways to take advantage of that too. But maybe that's another story for another day. And that, you can really beat the heck out of your competitors if you find yourself in that spot where you can just write content that hits a particular stage of the journey, always do well, and not have to worry about infrastructure. But not all of us are going to have that luxury. I mentioned cluster a few times, and that's really where I've got long form content that tells the story that I'm an expert. It branches off into pages that are, covering extensively what it means to be about things. And you see those circles on the end. These are content that's contributing to this success. It might answer a particular common prospect question. It might elaborate and get into more detail of something that was mentioned on the parent page. Really getting into understanding, does this page support another page? It may then not need to get direct traffic. It may just have the value of supporting its parent. And how much support content is needed to build out the whole story that I am the expert. These are tasks you have to do today to really compete with some of the larger, more successful publishers in your space if you're anywhere remotely competitive. I'll give you a great example of situations where not having cluster content. And actually, there's a great article by Kevin Indig that was recently published that you should look it up. And I know he's doing a couple webinars, and it's about internal linking. But that's hard. It's hard to understand internal linking best practices. Here's an easy way of thinking about it. Do you have pages that only have one link to them and it's internal? Find them. Are they valuable or are they not? We call them one-and-ones, right? Somewhere, some reason, you've only got one way to get to this page. So what are you telling the search engines? You're telling them this isn't connected to anything. It's not important. It might be, You might have to go 6 clicks away from your homepage to find it. So why would you expect, if you're telling the story that this page isn't important, why would you expect for that to contribute to the value of your site? So finding those, some one-on-ones or those orphan pages, finding ones that aren't built into the infrastructure of your site, the natural information architecture. Maybe it's because you're stuck to a particular content management system. Maybe it's because you just forgot about those pages. Try to figure out, do any of those things exist? And would you rather that page be part of a cluster of content or a collection of content that's contributing to your authority? Those are the first phases that get you to kind of grasp where you can have improvements with your site. Sometimes it doesn't even require doing any new content or updating existing content. Sometimes you will have to update existing content to make it mesh well with the collection of content. So adding a section, expanding it to be more robust, to cover more user intent targets, or to have a section that will naturally connect to another page. Another cool example of this is bridge topic building. So I'm really good on topic A. I've got a great cluster of content on A. I'm really good on topic C, but A and C, they don't really connect too well. I've got 100 pages over here and 100 pages over there. Well, if I can figure out the connection, like imagine I'm going to space on the game show, but somebody else can fill that in the quotes, where you connect two words together. But what are those B topics? And they might not be perfectly aligned to your business, but if you were an authority on those bridge topics, it would connect the dots between A and C more simply, and it would cause all boats to rise. Those are some really fun situations. That can be, maybe you're launching a new brand. Maybe you're trying to appeal to a different group that you never have before. You might have to start thinking about, what are the concepts that tell the story that I should be about that C topic. I need to build that B topic to get there. If I've never written any content about the marine industry, but I think that my one page about CRM software for the marine industry is going to do well, I'm sorely mistaken. And it's about, I need to have content that tells the story that I actually understand that industry, in order to bolster and build and enhance my credibility on that space. So you can see there's a lot of different graphics. It may not be this simple for you. It may be the situation where you have to connect the dots between a lot of different things in a lot of different situations. So be critically thinking about your site. Think about how it is structured. Do particular page types get abused? They don't get the type of integration, because maybe it's politics. Maybe it's just the structure of your site or your CMS. That's all okay. We can fix all that, right? You can figure all that out. But by thinking about the fact that, hey, all of our stuff that relates to, MRP software isn't in the same place. It's in 19 silos. I got to raise my hand. We got to figure something out here. We got one hand over here and one hand. We're not talking to each other with our content pool. If we were to make them work together, all boats are going to rise. We're going to be more of an authority on these things. We're going to have more pages ranking for dozens, hundreds, thousands of words, which is telling the story that we are semantically related to a lot of things. So, which is what you want. You want pages on your site that qualify to rank for dozens, hundreds, thousands of things, because then you can tactically take next steps and say, there's a keyword in there that actually I could target with a explicit intent page, connect it to this one, and it's going to be even more successful than that page that's got 1,000 words ranking for it. All of those types of tactical implementations of user intent profile are available today, and they're available. You can do them manually. They're painful. There's a number of solutions that will speed your journey up on that path. But it all starts with step one. It's thinking about what you have today. It's thinking about what you want to do, and then figuring out, okay, what can I get done in my current practice. So just to highlight and get into this from a things to think about and takeaways. User intent is something that you need to understand specifically for your business model, for your target audience. It's not the same as what does something mean, or disambiguation or ambiguous meaning. It can be explicit or it can be very fractured. It can have a lot of different reasons why someone's searching for this thing. There is a Google SERP favored intent. So it's the thing that Google thinks is the best solution. Does that align with the way that you think? Do you think there's more pages that you need to create in order to tell the story that you deserve to be there in that favored intent, in that search engine result page? A lot of times people will only look at what's ranking and they won't think about what other stuff would need to be there for you to effectively qualify as an expert on that topic. Example there would be where you want to rank with a definition, but you've never written anything else on that topic. Odds are you're not going to rank well for that definition, for a what is type of query. Content mapping the existing content that you have to your customized description of the buyer journey. That's going to allow you to see where those gaps are. It's going to allow you to see maybe you had some tendencies in your historical strategy that weren't all that strong. And then you can get into some of the more, the more exciting fields of understanding, does this search engine result page have, special features on it? Am I going for, the answer box? Am I, so you're getting into those kind of next tier things after you master this and after you get that, the situation where you understand where all your content sits. Is it grouped together in a logical manner? Is it telling the story that you're an expert? Is it answering the questions that your users care about? You're putting your best foot forward. You're putting your brand's best foot forward. And that's what's going to yield results in the mid and long term. And you're going to find a lot of quick wins and hits along the way. So there's a couple things and references that I'll also mention before we get into Q&A. One of them is the Google Quality Raters Guidelines. If you haven't ever read that, it's something you can download. It's a large PDF. It's about 250 pages. It looks at the way that human raters at Google assess pages. And if you can apply any of those to your business, it can be a very powerful reference. I also mentioned Kevin Indig. He's done some great work in this field, most recently about internal link structure. And then Rob Bucci at Stat, Moz, whatever. He's done quite a bit of work on this as well. And they're doing some really great innovative things. So in his BUCCI. And then on link development with regard to, there's some applications of this that relate to specifically inbound link development. And that, if you look at Roger Monti or Martini Buster from Webmaster World Forums, I've been doing this for about 20 years. So I'm probably dating myself on some of these things, but he's done a lot of work on this too. So Kevin Indig, Rob Bucci, Roger Monti, and the Google Quality Raters Guidelines would all be great references to follow up to this presentation and start to put this into action today. So again, I'm going to stop and take some questions. And I thank you so much. Again, if you haven't already, give St. Jude a pop. Think about it. Is this something that you want to support? Share this with your networks. And thanks again for the opportunity from the 24 Hours of SEO group.
Jeff, that was awesome, man.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, dude.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Every time I hear you speak, you get my gears turning, and I just want to go out there and start building more topic clusters.
And I knew this would be one for Vin when I saw the topic.
Yeah,
right in his wheelhouse.
but hey, man, we do have a couple questions for you, so we'll jump right into that.
Great. Yeah.
Megan Mars wants, and this is pretty much has to go around the old concept of breaking your silo.
Mm-hmm.
So she asks, how do you handle link building for content clusters? Some people seem to be very strict about only linking to other pages within the cluster, but I've always felt that seems unnatural. And I would imagine with your inclusion of bridge content, that would require internal linking outside the cluster. What do you think?
Absolutely. And so you're speaking about explicitly internal linking. Absolutely. There's going to be connections across the sites. It's not just going to be within that one support structure. Because, I mean, you think about it, right? All topics have parents. All keywords are topics. All topics have larger, it's a subset of something else. So if you can logically do that, it's going to be natural. You're also going to have internal source references that are going to be natural too. You're also going to have connections to landing pages or other things that are going to be valuable. I hate to call people out explicitly, but if you want to look at best practice on this, there are people that build up massive authority on topics just so that they can point out of their cluster at landing pages and try to get them to rank. So they'll build up massive authority with long form content intertwined, and then they just smash power at these landing pages to see if that works, and they'll try to do that at scale. So yeah, there's the concept of I'm gonna mess it. Eric Van Buskirk's coined this phrase. He'd love that I mentioned it. A creep, a cluster creep. So if you've got a habit of always pointing to other topics that are unrelated, that's going to be weird. But if you can justify them logically, editorially, totally okay. And I think if you look at, and I say Kevin Indig is going to have to give me a prop medal today.
I found the link that you referenced, and I put it in the chat.
Oh, good, yeah. If you look at that, it'll support that. It'll support that. And yeah, I mean, I always just, with anything linking related, especially even with inbound links, I always like to say, is it natural? I mean, natural is your key. Can you make it look real natural? And that's some SEOs might go there. But really, is it natural? And if it's not, you've got to really question it. And that's why, an advertiser link in line is weird, right? That's why something else. But the other thing that it wasn't even Megan's question, but I'm going to answer it anyway, right? Because me, man. Is external linking is so important. If you're not thinking about external linking, that's another topic for another day. But you need to give me a call. We have so many people are so afraid to externally link because historically people have told them not to. They've said it's going to hurt them. Externally linking strategically isn't linking to your competitors who are also going for your current keywords, the keywords you're targeting. It's linking appropriately to appropriate sources. It's also thinking about adjacencies and what makes sense for you to point out. If you've got clusters that only link within themselves and don't link external, that's a negative signal.
Right.
I can show you that, and it will kill you. If you see a competitor doing that.
Have you isolated in your testing? Have you isolated external linking as a variable by itself? And
absolutely.
It's pretty powerful, huh?
Oh, extraordinarily powerful. And the topics that you externally link to, within that, strategically pushing to the right ones, have much more of an impact than concepts that may not have semantic relatedness.
Right. So what it boils down to is, if you're looking at it from a user experience perspective, as long as it makes sense to help the user to link externally or internally, it's okay to break the silo as long as it makes sense to do so.
Yeah, the one exception to that is don't be a knucklehead, right? Don't link to your competitor in your first sentence of your article. Don't link to a page that's actually better than yours for servicing the same user intent. We see this. Like, if people, you're writing the definition for what is CRM software, and then you got to link to Wikipedia. It's like, Wikipedia says CRM software is blah 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 blah. Well, don't do that. So there are some exceptions of that silo. You don't want to break that. But yeah, it's don't tell the story that you've actually got the best page. Don't say somebody else does. And if you write that part down, you'll get what I'm saying with the rest of it.
Yeah. So I've got a question. I've got a question personally for you here. And I think it's something especially affiliate SEOs face when they're building their topic clusters, because the awareness about topic clusters is becoming more prevalent. More people understand the concept and they're trying to implement it. But when they build their topic clusters, they're basically looking at their competitors that have already done it already, and they're basically just matching that cluster. So if we're going to reverse engineer competitors, both with the topic cluster and the keyword map, what are we missing there? What are we losing by doing that?
Ooh, that's such a great question. So I'll move my camera a little bit. What pieces are missing in that equation? You've got to look at their historical publication patterns. How long did it take them to build up their catalog of content? What did they publish and when over time? What their frequency of generating links with particular content types or individual content items, so their link velocity for each of those pages and those page types. And you're effectively creating a history lesson for that competitive cohort, what they did and what they saw along the way.
Right.
Now I see their end result. I had to compare that to mine. What's happening when I do this? What's my history been? So now when I look at that, I'm saying, okay, one strategy may be that I want to write equal to or better content than they have on everything. But I may only want to write equal to or better content than the things they've done that works.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Completely unfair. And we have that as we deliver this as a service, as you know,
Right.
and it's competitive cohort profiling. And that is, it's evil in its nature, right? But what does it yield? It yields beautiful things. It's to say that I can take what you did in a year and turn it into 2, 3, 4 months of effort. And I know when I come out the bottom of that, I'm going to have a better work product than you have.
Sure.
And that is something you can lather, rinse, and repeat for yourself and your brand. And that's something that is super tight. And that's it does though require you understand maybe you're trying something that you can't do. You're punching above your weight.
Sure.
It's a topic you've never touched on, and you have to build more of a foundation before you even get into it. You can't just go writing about the iPhone tomorrow and expect that to work. It's not going to work. So there are some catches there, and understanding what those catches are is key. So
that's a great answer. I just wanted to seed that idea for everybody that you can't always just turn out the same cluster just because a competitor is doing it. You got to look at some other factors.
No, it won't work. It won't work. Most of the time, it does not work. When it does work, there's a series of data points that have to be met, and it has to be a cohort, right? It have to be equal to them in many ways. One of them is historical publishing patterns.
Cool, man. Well, we got a couple other questions here. Let's just get through it before the hour's up. Nick Rizzo asks, let's say you have one cluster fully developed and you have the option to go after 3 other clusters. How would you decide which cluster to go after you already finished the first one?
That's a good question. Fully developed. So it would depend on the answer to fully developed, what fully developed means. And Nick, it's a great question. I would see what was my path to get that done. Did I start with a pillar or did I actually start long tail targeting and then I built out my pillar? I would want to know that before I answer this question, so I don't know. But let's just say you did it all at once. Let's just say arbitrarily. I would be looking at, for ease of success, I'd be looking at, do I have any historical success on those topics? That'd be step 1. So even if it's not great, like I've got something to show for myself, that I've got some rankings, I've got some topics that I'm happy with the content. That would be step 1. I'd be looking at competitive cohort profiling. For 2, I'd look to see how long did it take for someone who I admire in the same target, and what did they do? What was their process, and how successful and quick was it? So, do I have any existing power? The momentum, right? And then what's the competitive cohort look like? And then impact on my business, right? Do I have any historical reference of whatever my key performance indicator is that this is going to yield money, reputation, gold,
whatever your goal is at the end of the day,
you know, social media links, you know, whatever it is that you are keen on. Do I have historical reference to that? And is it going to be a meaningful enough of that? So that's where the commodity data of volume comes in. But the gotcha on that is make sure that you're counting the right volume, and make sure you're the most common mistake in people using volume is that if they actually achieve the ranking for that term, they actually achieve the ranking for dozens more, hundreds more. The term pool multiplier on this phrase may be high, it may be low. Very few people know how to research that. That's something to be thinking about, right? So if you go into it and in that you are to get to that topic's pinnacle, you're going to have thousands of other things. Is the collective of all that worthwhile? That's the answer to the question of that. It's like, what do I replace my traditional volume measurement? And it's one is historical success, competitive profiling, and then my is the juice worth the squeeze? Yes, that's the phrase.
There you go. That's a great answer, Jeff. And I just got one more question for you, and then we'll let you go. Colin McDermott, he wants to know with your access to data over at Market News, how, as far as the Medica update goes and the concept of EAT and your money, your life, have you guys seen any changes that you've been able to track, and what recommendations do you have to build trust?
Yeah, I get a number of groups that I participate in. There's, obviously the one that Vince, you and I are both in the Rhodium community. There was a lot of discussion about this, and we've done extensive research of that particular update. Also, that update wasn't the only time those types of sites have seen major fluctuations. And the QRG has a great walkthrough, the Google Quality Raters of why your money or your life, and of EAT. How do you develop this in a quick way, or a keen understanding? It's really about competitive analysis. It's who are the players in this space, and am I able to get away with content at this particular level of quality? And then, looking in the mirror and saying, am I okay with that right now? Am I okay that that's what I'm going to put out? A great example of this is, and there's a great example of this is in legal. We have a lot of legal clients. And in non-competitive spaces, they weren't impacted as much.
Sure.
And when it was competitive, it was. But then it's also about, do you really want to represent yourself with mid-frame? And I don't think Nick's ever seen me without my beard. I shaved.
I haven't. I was surprised, man.
I know. I come completely slim. I looked like Grizzly Adams last week. I sent a picture to a relative, and she's like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "That's me." Yeah, I guess we haven't seen each other in a while. So yes, clean shave today. But yeah, the situation is that there were situations where content that was low quality, they were resting on the laurels of pages that really weren't great. Right. Or they engineered site structures. They engineered site structures to try to work around historical pain. If you look at the list, and I don't want to dox anybody on this, if you look at the list of sites that were most heavily impacted, and you look at their historical publishing tendencies, you can find the points when they actively tried to engineer their way out of historical low quality content. That to me was the guiding light to our research, which we were able to then program into our technology to assess this. We figured out that there were things that happened that, you hate to say it, people thought they got away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they didn't. There were people that were caught in the nets, though, unfairly. And I like to think that stuff gets remediated over time, but I really don't have any personal experience with that. But there's also situations where, people had their stuff hit with that update, and also the one that was 2 months prior, and they're like, yeah, I kind of suck. Yeah, maybe I need to not sell this info product anymore, or something else that gets to do it. So I think that to establish what you can get away with now is competitive landscape. To if you're in a zone, your money or your life zone, if you're in certainly we have a lot of customers in big pharma, life sciences, very, large businesses. Don't mess around with governance, regulatory compliance. Don't even ride the edge on that stuff. Play it straight. If you've got those things in your head, and then if legal, insurance, a couple other fields, like those types of zones, a little bit grayer area. I think don't think that the same rules apply to you that apply to the site that's been around for 20 years that has 1 million pages of content. That's like a gap I've seen people think like, well, no, does it? I can too.
I really like the term you used, historical pain.
Yeah.
And I guess for the layman, that would just mean that if you don't have a history of high quality content, it's going to be hard to fake that. And I think a lot of us call that domain authority, but it's really not. It's a history of putting your money where your mouth is, really, and putting out valuable content.
Yeah, and few people got away with it in those sites and get away with it over time. That's okay too. It's going to happen. But I felt really good about that and 3 or 4 of the other updates that were less published, that it's really going the way of the type of thing that, people like Nick, see, I got to give him a vouch, right? People like Nick, people like I have been talking about for over a decade, and it's quality. When I was at my previous company, we had a large editorial team in-house, large content contributors, and it was quality first. And it may not feel that great today because it's hard, but it's really going to feel good tomorrow when,
you can bank on that content for 2 years from now or 10 years from now. However long.
13. I mean, my most, in my previous network, my most powerful link that I acquired was from 2000, and it's still sitting there. And I won't tell you what it is, but it's still sitting there, and it's still the most powerful one.
Yeah, please don't tell us what it is.
No, you get blown up. But it's not traditional, right? It's not the way that makes sense. It doesn't give you the immediate dopamine rush, but that's got to be okay, and you got to make that case internally, which can be hard. So.
Yeah, SEOs have to forego instant gratification. It's just part of the job.
Exactly.
But
that was fun.
Hey man, that was awesome, dude, and I would love to talk to you about this all day long. But it's Mr. Nick. Nick is up here,
coming at you from Philadelphia, perhaps.
Garrett did that for the longest time. He sat in front of a green screen, and he was always in front of a skyscraper or something crazy.
When in our internal meetings, we use Zoom, and you can put. People will say something, and I have like 14 different screens, so all of a sudden they'll say, jungle, and then a jungle will appear. I'll don't stay too serious, right?
Well, there you go, guys. That was Jeff from marketmuse.com, and definitely, you guys put out some great content on the site too. So I'll definitely check it out because if you want to learn more about topic clusters, that's the place you want to.
There's some really good. Yeah, there's some really good articles. A lot of them are written from Steven Jeske. He's our lead content strategist. We've got some really great stuff. We do a lot of great webinars as well. A little plug. Got one coming up with NewsCred. It's going to be lights out next month. And then if anyone wants to email me questions, jeff@marketmuse.com, please feel free, no matter how fun or ridiculous they might be. Thanks.
Cool, man. Thanks so much.